Hi, I'm Steph. I'm a non-genre reader, and I want to talk about what I read last month and what I want to read this month. Also, my son is homesick from school, so you're going to hear some sniffing, some coughing, background noise in general. Show must go on. Let's get into it. Now, I don't have physical copies for everything that I read last month, so I'm gonna put little images on the screen for when I didn't. I had some arcs, I had some Libby holds, things like that. First and foremost, I read Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. I did get an arc for this one via ForeverPub. Thank you, Forever. I love you. I want to kiss you on the forehead. This was crack. Like, I could not put it down. This is everything that I want in a romantasy. It's dark, it's tumultuous, it's questionable, it's female empowerment, it's let's get out of this. It's, oh my God. For any of my Hermione girlies, it's the auction. It's very spot on with the fanfic. Now, side note, for those who don't know, this is going to be published in a trilogy. So good luck to all of us waiting for books 2 and 3 to come out, because I finished the first one and I was so ravenous for more that I had to go back and, number 2, reread the auction, because I was like, nothing else is going to scratch this itch, and if I don't, I fear I'm going to enter a book slump from which there will be no return. So thank you, Julie, for damaging my psyche. I'm just kidding. I love you forever. I love you so much. So yeah, then I went back and reread the auction, and it's been 2 years since I've read that fic to begin with, and so all the details were a little bit fuzzy. I got to really dive back in to the meat and potatoes of this fic that I'd forgotten everything. Like, I remember the vibe of it, but I'd forgotten all the details. Fantastic experience. 10 out of 10. You definitely need to go back and do that again in case you haven't yet. Also, if you love fan fiction and if you love Julie Soto, I highly recommend reading the auction before going into Rose in Chains if you're looking for a really fun dual experience. Personally, I love the comparisons, so I did do that, except in the reverse order because I couldn't get enough. The third book that I finished in March was Bitter by Akwaeke and Emezi. I listened to the audiobook version of this one via Libby. This was the prequel to Pet, which I finished last month. I loved it, and this to me was just, I love Emezi's ability to commentate on society, on social structures, on eat the rich culture even, in this way that is so digestible and also very age appropriate given that this is a YA book. I love the premise of this. I think it's so creative, where we're carrying on from Pet. Again, it's Pet's mother's story, where she goes to art school, she does these beautiful paintings, she gives like a drop or so of blood to the painting, and then the painting comes to life. Well, in this case, she conjures these ghastly angels. I say the word ghastly very loosely. They're very scary looking. And in this story, they did cause a lot of chaos, and they are pretty violent, but they're there to hunt the monsters. They're there to hunt the bad guys. And the whole premise is very, very interesting. Without spoiling anything, when the story comes to a head, it leaves Bitter sitting there thinking, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like the right way to go about doing this. And it was a very interesting way of looking at everything, especially given the political climate right now. I loved it. It was a short, sweet, to the point audiobook. I think maybe 6 hours, so you could easily listen to it in a work day if you wanted to. Really, really enjoyed that one. And then next, I finished The Fires of Vengeance, which is book 2 in The Burning by Evan Winter. This series is my new holy grail. Granted, I will say, I went into this thinking, oh, that's a completed duology. I'm about to have the time of my life. No, this ends on a big old cliffhanger, and I had to go to bed after finishing this one. I was like, are you kidding me? The third book is supposed to come out later this year. I've seen conflicting information whether it's supposed to come out in May or October. I don't know. I reached out to Orbit and I was like, please, may I have some more? Asking for possibly even an advanced copy of the third one. We'll see if that happens. I don't know if I'm going to be so lucky. But regardless, this is now the high fantasy series that I will be recommending to everybody. You've got dragons, you've got demons, you have commentary on social, like, caste and social structure. This is the series that I am now going to be recommending to everybody. It's definitely high fantasy. You've got revenge, you've got rage, you have an imperfect main protagonist character that we're following. You have, it is so good. This had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I absolutely ate this up. It was so fantastic. And then I read an arc for Crueler Mercies by Maren Chase. This was via Bindery, via NetGalley. So thank you, Bindery, for the complimentary copy. I gave this one probably about a 3 stars. I will say the beginning was really interesting. It was kind of a Rapunzel retelling. The ending was really fun and powerful and feminine rage and all these really powerful, cool, clever things. Everything in the middle, plot-wise, felt a bit muddied to me. So that's where it kind of lost me a little bit. It was a fun read. I wouldn't say it was a light read. read because it does have some darker themes present in there, but it's sapphic, it's romantasy. It was really interesting, and it's going to be coming out soon. I'll put the release date on the screen, but that one was really fun and interesting. Definitely feel free to check it out if you'd like. I've heard a lot of really rave reviews about it, so I may be alone in my opinion, and that is a-okay. Then I read This Is How to Lose a Time War, and so this one, it's giving You've Got Mail meets Romeo and Juliet retelling in this like sci-fi time travel setting. Don't be fooled by how short it is, because I kind of felt like it was slow getting going, where you're really just expected to pick up the lingo, the verbiage, and run with it, which I prefer that. Like, I want less explaining, more just dive in and figure it out, if you know what I mean. I will say this is another 3-star one for me, where one, I didn't feel like there was enough time for the main characters to fall in love with one another, and number two, why was there a time war? That was never explained. It's kind of just expected that we're supposed to just, oh, accept that this time war is going on. You've got basically the machine side versus the nature side, but it was never clear to me why it was going on, or what the end game was, what the purpose was. So that was a bit confusing. I wish there was a bit more world building and context in that respect, but outside of that, devastatingly romantic. I loved the prose. It was so poetic, so lyrical, so beautiful, and I mean, I definitely think it's still worth the read, if only just to dive into how gorgeously written this is. And then I read Nevada by Imogen, Binnie, and this one, I will say, I don't think this book is for everybody. It's very like deranged girl lit fic, and I mean that in the kindest way possible, because you have this main character who is deeply flawed in the sense that she just keeps making bad decision after bad decision, and just like cannot get out of her own head. She cannot get out of her own way, to the point where like she basically steals her ex-girlfriend's car and like drives across the country and like doesn't tell anybody what's going on or anything. Like, a lot of not very considerate behaviors that she's doing. Outside of that, there's really, from a plot device standpoint, and this is still that like deranged girl lit fic flavor, there's really no plot or character development or resolution. And so in that sense, I mean, from a storytelling device perspective, it's like, okay, what was the point of telling the story? Outside of that though, the characterizations I felt were very strong, and there was some really genuinely wonderful, intelligent, and beautifully written analysis on gender, on feminism, on the patriarchy. So I do think this is worth a read. I don't think it's for everybody. I think it's definitely for people with a very specific taste in books, but I think there were things that I really enjoyed about it, and there were things that I was like, okay, like, where are we going with this? So I was kind of on the fence with which side we were going on with that one. And lastly for the month, I was getting really bad FOMO, and I ended up going and picking up Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, because who isn't, who hasn't, who doesn't want to do that? All of my friends on the internet are like freaking out, crying, screaming, crying, throwing up reading this book. I'm like, I gotta see what the deal is here. If I'm anything in this world, I'm a Hunger Games girly. I love that universe. I love her clever metaphors that she uses that reference and critique real life things. I think she puts up some really important things that are worthy of discussion and need to be discussed. This book traumatized me, just like all the other ones did. I loved and hated every second of this. So if you love the Hunger Games, you're gonna love this one too. I absolutely was obsessed with it. Now for April, I don't like setting TBRs because I never stick to them, and they just feel like pointless performative social media posts. So instead, I have this pile of books that sound interesting to me at that moment that I mood read from. Will I read all these books this month? No. I promise you I'm not going to read every single one of these, but I will read some of these. Plus like some Libby borrows and some arcs and whatnot, because, you know, a little bit of everything. So I thought I'd go ahead and show you what's in this pile and what little I know about them. I go into books blind, so I don't know that much, but I know like just enough to get by to understand the vibe of the book, because I have been craving these deeper stories lately, like less fluff, more like societal analysis, I guess. I don't know. I want deeper stories, and so this is what I've pulled from. Let's go through the stack together. First and foremost, we've got The Weight of Blood by Tiffany Jackson. From what I understand, this is a Carrie retelling. This is the year that I dipped my toes into horror. Then we've got The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. Theoretically, I want to finish this entire trilogy this year. I read the 5th season. I read the 5th season last year. The ending made me cry, and I had just been putting it off because I'm like, I know this series is gonna absolutely F me up. So anyway, the second one is on my mood reading list right now because this is also a stunningly written high fantasy. Again, I loved every minute of it, even when she was hurting me. Then we've got Chain Gang All-Stars. This one I feel like has been going around book talk. This is prison system fed gladiators, like modern day gladiators. So this is gonna have some really interesting social commentary, I think, both on like race, on social class or economic class, however you want to phrase that. This one's gonna be really interesting, so this one has been on my list. This one's called The Mothers. I don't know what this is about outside of motherhood and the gravity of those choices. Then we've got The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. Holocaust-esque environment where we've got people like actively rewriting history, and they're trying to make people forget who actually witnessed the history. So it's very like propaganda fueled, but like the main characters are trying to preserve the honesty of writing and the power of journalism. Then I've got Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I read The Blues Sisters earlier this year, and that was like one of my favorite books that I know I'm going to be reading this year. If you're unfamiliar with Coco Mellors, I would put her like Sally Rooney meets Emily Henry, but like Happy Place Emily Henry, not like Beach Read Emily Henry. This is like the toxic relationship book, and I want it to traumatize me. Then I also got The Vegetarian by Han Kang. So this is written through everybody's perspective other than the main characters. She decides to go vegetarian after having really gory, meaty, yucky dreams like that, and they're like really messing with her psyche. So she's like, I can't do it, I can't eat meat anymore. Everybody around her starts to vilify her. So I think this might have some really interesting commentary on like gender and like feminism, on patriarchy, on these kinds of roles and these attitudes. So I'm really excited. Han Kang is actually an author I've been really meaning to get into lately. Everything that I've seen by this author just looks super good and kind of dark, which is like my favorite combo. Then we've got Unbound by Christy Healy. This one was actually sold to me by one of my favorite bookstores. One of their people working the floor was like telling me about how this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but the beauty is the beast. And this one's an arc, and I'm a little bit late on this because of who I am as a person. And also I'm pregnant, so I'm gonna use that as an excuse for everything. But My Friends by Frederick Bachman. Do I know what this is about? No. However, every other book that I've read by Frederick Bachman, which this is a Frederick Bachman stan account, I love his books, they destroy me. I end up like a crying, snotty, hyperventilating mess by the end of his books. So I'm really hoping this is gonna do the same. This one's a newer release, but this is called The Other People by C.B. Everett. And the way that it's positioned in the summaries is Clue, like Agatha Christie Clue meets Shutter Island. I'm fascinated. I'm sold. If Shutter Island means unreliable narrators, that's my favorite thing in the world, because I think that takes so much skill and intelligence to write a narrator that you can't trust because they don't even trust themselves. And then lastly, we've got The Will of the Many by James Islington. The second in this series is a highly anticipated release for me coming out later this year in September. I wanted to go ahead and get this first one under my belt. I also am really trying to convince my husband to read fantasy this year. He's kind of into more like spy military thriller kind of stuff and some nonfiction, and also Chuck Palahniuk, so make that one make sense. He's just a lad. He loves the Roman Empire, as all the lads do. I'm determined to get him to read this. I'm determined. Will I be reading all these books this month? No. Will I read some of them? Yes. I'm so excited. I just feel like we've got a really strong stack of mood reads, plus some really strong candidates going in my NetGalley, as well as like I always like to keep an audiobook on rotation while I'm doing chores and whatnot, because Libby is my true love. Libby is the love of my life. Anyway, so excited to dig into all these. I think April's gonna be another phenomenal reading month. March was my best yet. I want to see if we can still beat that this month. I think we can. Just like a little bit of dedication and hard work goes a long way. If you liked my video, if you're curious to see any updates and see how these work, let me know. Go ahead and like, go ahead and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you want to see. If you want to see vlogs, if you want to see anything your heart desires. Happy April.